don't believe that it's got a soul. I feel like trees could have
Do you think you could you define, or at least like kind of summarize what you think to be living is?
Yeah, okay. So I will say, yeah, like this is very, very new. You know, like this is very new information for me. Like in the sense of like considering that plants have souls, I only really thought about it the other day, and I actually was like, that really. Maybe I just did it because it fits what I believe,
right,
like with the reincarnation thing. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you just go into limbo. Who knows? Yeah. But I just feel like I just can't believe in eternal punishment, basically. And like for me to not believe in eternal punishment, I feel like surely there's something else. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm wrong with the reincarnation, but that's so far all I can think that makes sense. Yeah. And like at the same time, like I spoke to one of my friends who's like really Christian, and she's like, "You're not here to guess God's games." You know what I mean? Like that's not.
Ooh, she came with some bars. You're not here to guess God's games.
Yeah, like it's a thing of like you're not. That's not the point. Like
yeah, you know what? That's
like,
that's actually that. You know what?
like,
On that particular point, I think that's actually very key. That you know, a lot of the depression that I felt was because I feel like I can't grasp as a necessary limitation of being a human being. I feel like I can't grasp the grand picture, shall we say?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone can. I don't think anyone should.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but like I find it interesting to say we're not here to guess God's work, because I do feel that we have access to what we're meant to be doing, shall we say, or what we are doing. But I think, it's not necessarily something that you know when you're 21, or it's not something that you know when you're 50. You may not know it until you die, and like that's fair. But I do also believe that you could know it when you're like, you could know it when you're 21, for example. You could know it when you're 5. You could know it when you're 10. Yeah. But I think it would come to you in the form of kind of like, quote unquote, divine inspiration. I think it would come to you as some sort of revelation or some sort of experience. I don't know, like I guess my point is like when I've seen a lot of people that have done psychedelics now, and they talk about their experience, and they talk about how they feel like it's given them such greater insight and access into reality. Like they see that a lot of things that we have in our world are just bullshit. Do you know what I mean? They're just not real, or we just attach emotion to them and make them real when they're not. They by themselves, they don't carry that kind of weight. For example, like status. Like clearly the world exists in a hierarchy, right? There's obviously a top and a bottom in terms of a scale. There's and obviously there's most things fall in between. But how can I put this? I'm not saying that the hierarchy itself doesn't have value, because clearly it does, or it wouldn't exist. But at the same time, I think the attachment that we have to things like status within the hierarchy, I think, goes beyond what the hierarchy is, shall we say?
Are you filming this week?
I am.
Good. Okay, no, good. Because I was going to say, we fucking went in. And I hope that it's getting recorded, because like, this is a great conversation.
But
anyway, so yeah. So say that one again. So you're talking about hierarchy in like culture, modern culture.
Not even just culture, like in life, yeah. In life, say you could look at any different species or life form. There's hierarchies within that. Do you know what I mean? You'll see within a species there's going to be variations where some members or individuals of the species fall into the bottom half of the hierarchy. Say they're weaker, they're less intelligent, they maybe have some deficiencies in comparison to things at the top who are just, for whatever reason, genetically gifted. They seem to be at the upper end of the hierarchy. But for human beings, like, this is like, we have a really convoluted sense of that, in my opinion. Like we operate in things like hierarchies in society. We have we call people low class, for example, or we call people poor, low class, or working class. Like that in itself is breaking down society into an economic hierarchy, right? But we've also entered into a situation in the modern day and age where there's a lot of emphasis on attaining the top of that hierarchy, and that we value people at the top of that hierarchy more than we do people that are lesser. And my example of that would be like our celebrity culture, say, and how much we just idolize people that are, you know what I mean? They all they have is status, right? All they have is a position of fame. Like we know who they are, but it doesn't mean that in the grand scheme of life, over the course of 100 years, over the course of 500 years, 1,000 years, that they've actually done anything for mankind. Do you know what I mean? It's just at the time, it appears to be that way. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like, I think, to draw that back to what I was trying to say about we're not here to guess God's work. I think that's actually a really good phrase, because I think it ties into that sense of seeking things that you think are right for yourself because they seem to be right within the world. But then when you actually look at things beyond just a relative level, beyond just my interaction with you and your interaction with the patients that you have, so on and so forth, when you look at it in the sense of humanity as a species progressing over, you know what I mean, X amount of time, a lot of the things like status, etc., I think they actually have very little value. But like I said, we seem to put so much value onto them for like it's just like a modern phenomenon, shall we say. Of course, you know what I mean, like 1,000 years ago, people were big into their hierarchies and stuff. But
kings and queens.
When you take up a position of, say, of higher power, it seems kind of like, why do we even crave these things when it's not even something for me to have? Like, if I'm in a position of being being high up in the hierarchy, then that's not even necessarily by my doing. Do you know what I mean? That's by fortune in a lot of ways, by luck. Like, obviously, I'm not going to take away the credit from man that have achieved a lot by like scientific means or whatever. Like, they've made certain discoveries. But at the same time, like, the huge emphasis that we put on them, I think, is like, I see it's just quite damaging.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you feel like, in terms of, like, I guess, God's work, do you feel like, or like God's plan, shall we say, do you feel like you can know, or do you feel like you're not meant to know? Or what do you feel? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I feel like it's a sentiment of, like, it's not about whether you can or can't know in my eyes. It's like, it feels like it's something that, well, I guess actually it feels like it's something that we will never know fully until, I guess, in my eyes, until you become one with God. You know what I mean? Like, which would, for me, mean going to heaven. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. I'd like to come back to that, but sure, Karen.
Because I feel like really, it's a thing where it's not something that is supposed to be known, because I guess, like, it could even be a sense of, like, we can't comprehend. You know what I mean? Like, it could be something that we can't comprehend. So again, we're, like, in my view, we're not perfect. We're human. Like, you know, the expression "we're only human," like, is quite fitting to how I feel about, like, people, because we're not deity. Like, you know, we're not gods. We're humans. Like, we're mortal.
We're naturally limited, like, right? That's what you're trying to say.
And maybe what we don't know and what we can't find out is something that actually can't be comprehended by mortals. You know what I mean? Like, I know.
No. I get that. I actually agree with that sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, maybe that is it. And, like, that's why I believe, like, when you become one with God, like, they say nirvana for, like, Hinduism, like, where it's like reaching a state of enlightenment.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time looking
at that enlightenment,
searching into it.
Like, that enlightenment is effectively, like, what the top of that is.
So interesting. Okay, yeah, I guess I'd like to return back to your point about, you saying you feel like you're only one with God when you pass on from this life, right? That's what you're trying to say. What?
Yeah, well, when you go to heaven. Yeah, I talked about reincarnation, so I don't believe that you instantly.
Right. So from my perspective, yeah, I believe that we're always one with God. I don't think it's possible to not be one with God.
Yeah, I believe that we're always with God, but I don't believe that we're... Yeah, okay, I do get what you're saying there, yeah, because I also believe that God is always... Well, I believe that God is always with me.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if that means that I'm one with God.
Yeah, but why do you believe that you're not one with God now, in this very moment?
I guess it's a sentiment of like, because my soul isn't connected with that, you know what I mean?
Could you explain that further? I'm not sure I entirely understand that.
So like your soul is like, so for me, like your soul is like, it's kind of hard to explain. Let me try to think.
Take your time.
So I guess it's a sentiment of like, before you're enlightened, I feel like enlightenment for me, this is probably the important stuff. The enlightenment for me is probably when you kind of become one with God, in the sense of like you pass into heaven, and the enlightenment is like maybe your soul just becomes enlightened. And then I guess because I then feel like once you're enlightened, you can understand like kind of what God's plan was, if that makes sense. Like, then that's when you become one with God, rather than being like God being with you, if that makes sense. Because like, I guess it's that thing of like you don't become the same level as God, like you don't become a deity, but because you are in heaven, you can understand it, maybe, and maybe that's what I feel like being one with God is, like when you're kind of on the same page.
Okay, so I guess correct me if I'm wrong. So would you say that, in this life, we're not, when you say we're with God, do you mean that we're guided by God in this life? Like he's...
Yeah, I believe, so I would say that when we're in this life, before we go to heaven, God is with us. We're not one with God. That makes sense.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, yeah, it's not a perspective that I hold, because I believe that you can't, I don't think that you can ever not be one with God. I think everything is one with God, because I believe that God is fundamentally all things, but I mean, that's just my perspective.
No, but the thing is, this is what I mean, why it's like, it's still kind of new and it's kind of hard for me to explain, because I don't believe that we're not with God, because I always believe that
you can't be apart from God, right? That's what you're saying,
Exactly, yeah. But I feel like being one with God is kind of being...
So you would say that if you're one with God, right, you have access to, divine knowledge, divine...
Yeah, like in a way, yeah, because it's kind of like you're...
As part of being a limited being, right, we can't see the past and we can't see the future. We have records of the past, but they're partial. You can never have a complete access to the past because it's gone, right? Like you can only ever live now. You can never know what the future is. You can only guess and make assumptions.
Yeah.
But you're saying that when you move beyond this limited form, that is being like having faculties that are necessarily limited, right? Like when you pass on from this, you believe that you lose restriction, shall we say, that prevent you from seeing things or like knowing things eternally, shall we say. So you could understand the purpose of your life in retrospect when you die or you pass on, shall we say, because now you're part of that stream that is forever. Do you know what I mean? You're part of something that doesn't ever perish.
Yeah.
Whereas the life that we have perishes.
I would say, you would get the understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you could get the understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Then.
Yeah. That's really interesting, man. Because I mean, I feel like it's a bold claim to make, but I feel like we can have access to all the things that I think you said, but it requires, a lifetime of dedication through like meditation, spiritual practice, like moral training.
But again, the only other fear is this. So this is what I was talking about with my work, is that the fear is that if you do try and understand God, are you not then just like changing it into what fits
100%.
There's a lot of text.
I big agree with that. I big time agree with that.
Of people changing it. So in a way, like I do like to kind of think about it, but at the same time, I do sly think that it's like not
because you know it's
right,
incomprehensible, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So it's like I am effectively guessing what makes it fit my mind.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's not necessarily. And again, this goes back to the point of like you can't know God's will, like or God's want, because you can only know what we've been told and interpret it as we've been told as humans. But like no one will ever know, because no one is God. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, my perspective on that is that I believe we can know the will of God, but not necessarily intellectually. Because my example of this would be that when you live life, right, all the things that you've done before now, I consider that to be the will of God, because it couldn't have taken place any other way.
Without,
it's just like everything that happened. Do you know what I mean? I'm not using hypothetical evidence. Like I'm only using exactly what happened as evidence that it was meant to happen. Because if it wasn't meant to happen, it wouldn't have happened. I know obviously it's a bit of a like tautological argument, like it's a circular argument where like obviously what's meant to happen because it happened, like obviously. But in my opinion, like yeah, it is obvious, but we keep disregarding that obviousnness for like our own like hubris, like our own want to be more than what we are, which isn't, I don't think is okay, cool. Yo. Yeah, I guess like for me, it's one of those things where I don't know, like I don't think I can know the will of God intellectually, like I know exactly what God meant for me right now, because I don't, and that's been a big cause of my own personal frustration and my own personal like for me, I see it as like a shortcoming, even though it's ridiculous to think of it that way. But it's because I want to be more than I am. Do you know what I mean? I always want to achieve more than I have, because I want to do more for the world. You know, I want to do more for myself. And so I feel like if I just knew what I was meant to do, then I could do it. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I wouldn't be limited because I would just do it. But I think the big irony is that like no matter what I do, I'm doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no action that I can take that moves against greater will, because it was all meant to take place. Like even though it might seem ridiculous that like you taking a nap between 2 and 4 p.m. on Thursday, how does that fit into higher purpose? How does that fit into like the grand picture? But at the same time, by you like not interacting with other people at that particular time, a chain of events didn't take place that would have meant things in the universe would have been entirely different. Do you know what I mean? Like on a butterfly effect level, because obviously every action that you do has a knock-on domino effect to every part of the universe. Like okay, maybe it's not obvious, but it seems to me that every action that I take has a knock-on effect to other people. And like I think that's really self-observable, when it's like if your mum's angry, then it might make you angry. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like that anger is being projected onto you.
Because every action has a reaction.
Yeah, precisely. Every action has a reaction. Great. That's a great quote, or statement, I should say. But yeah, I mean, on that, it's kind of like, to me, you can never move against God's will. So like, should you question it? Like, should you ever question God's will? Like, should you ever question what you're meant to be doing? Or should you just do what appears that you should be doing? Yeah, like, because before you make any action, no matter what person sees this and says, like, you have a preconception about what you think is the right thing to do and what you think is the wrong thing to do, right? Like, no matter what action that is, whether you open the fridge and you go to take out that can of Coke or Tango, whatever, like, you know before you do that whether you should or shouldn't do it.
Yeah,
you have a feeling. You have like some sort of basic intuition, even if it's not as strong as like this is objectively right and this is objectively wrong. You may have an idea like, oh, maybe I should do that, but fuck it, I'm kind of feeling to do it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think like myself, for example, I fall prey to like thinking like, oh, is this the right action to take? Like, what will be right about what I'm doing? Like, is this really in the interest of like myself and the world? Like, am I really doing what's right? And like, that's where I personally like I fall short a lot. But yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. We're not here to know, to question, what is it? We're not here to question God's will.
Yeah. And God's plan.
Yeah, God's plan. Yeah. I don't know, I guess I just feel like in some ways we have, you can have access to it. Like, I suppose my example of that would be like, have you ever heard or are you familiar with like Taoism?
I've heard of this.
Like, I guess
as in, I feel like you.
Right. To give a brief conception of what it is. It's like it roughly translates into English as the way. Like, and when it says the way, it's like moving down the path in the correct manner, like going along your life in the right way. And that they just, you broadly define that as the way, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how can, like, what's the difference between knowing the way and then living the way? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, even if you didn't know the way, you could still walk it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you're just walking. You're just like, you don't need any knowledge of the end goal to just keep taking one step at a time.
Because I guess that goes down to like, because even so, I'm a big believer in fate, but like, I'm saying like fate is even like, you know what I mean? Like, I call it fate, but that could just be God's plan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, literally, like, it's the same thing. Like, because that's what in my eyes is to be intended, and I guess you could say who intended it, and that's God. You know, because some people would say the universe, but I would say God.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't distinguish between God and the universe. I think they're the same thing.
Yes, exactly. That's
yeah, but I mean, a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people feel that God is an independent entity aside from the universe. Do you know what I mean? Outside of the universe that created the universe, and in itself is like an individual phenomena. Whereas for me, I don't differentiate between the phenomena.
No, I feel like he's.
I mean, you can't. I feel like to be all encompassing is to be all things at once. But I mean, it's interesting. Like I said, I have a big problem with like Abrahamic religion's conception of God as a being, as an individual person, because I feel like. So I see it from two different perspectives, right? Like, I understand that to a layman, to a person that isn't educated, to a person that doesn't care about education, to a person that doesn't care to know spiritual practice beyond what they're meant to do, right? Beyond right and wrong. So like maybe just a family man who like he's happy to just he'll work all day every day until he dies, right? And the reason he does it is because he's been told that that's the right thing to do, and he just has faith, right? I think it's for that person. I think it makes sense to see God as an individuated being, because otherwise, it's very impersonal, it's very unrelatable, and if you can't relate to something, then you can't. How could you ever hope to internalize that and make it a system of faith and belief that you follow and live your life by? Like, so that's one level where I understand why perhaps the Bible or the Quran or the Torah is written in a certain way where God is personified, right? God is made into a masculine form, and we can see, I guess, like what. No, we can't see anything, but you know, we attribute aspects to him, to the creator, that are particular, like, but they're particular to us, right? They're not arbitrary, right? Like when we talk about he, we're just referring to God as a man, right? Like we're making God into what we are. But I think the issue that I draw with it is that I feel that it kind of leaves you open to maybe a basic understanding, not a basic understanding of God, but like an impartial view of God, where you see God only as like the loving father, or you see God only as like the judging father, or whatever, like however you're conceptualizing God, when the truth is God is all the things that you love and that you hate. Do you know what I mean? Whereas when you start making God into a being, I think it doesn't necessarily follow or make sense that God would be the pain that I feel in my knee or my lower back. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily follow that that's the case, but to me it is the exact case. That is exactly what God is. Like, God isn't different from the evil that's committed in the street. Like, God isn't different from the pillaging and the atrocities that's happened, but God also isn't different from the infinite love that we're capable of as well. Do you know what I mean? But
I think the other thing is so you know how we were talking about the being with God and God being with us. I guess the story for me that kind of puts it in perspective is one that we had at school. So really? It's the story where it's like there's a man walking down a beach, and he sees like along the way, like he sees like two sets of footsteps,
right?
And he says that was when God was walking with me.
Okay.
And the beach and the footsteps are supposed to represent his life, and then there's parts of the way where he only sees one set of footsteps, and they're like the hard bits of his life and the tough parts. And basically, he says that's where I felt like you abandoned.
Oh,
you know, where I was walking my own.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a sentiment of what God says to that is that I didn't abandon. Those footsteps are when you needed me most, and I carried you, basically. And I feel like that's the sentiment of God is with us, but we're not with God. Because I feel like it would be a thing of like, there are times when anyone, I believe that anyone, as much as spiritual as you can be, there has to be that time when you do feel like, maybe you do feel
right, an absence of faith, a doubt.
Life is really hard, and it's like, and there's always going to be at least one blip in your life where you believe that maybe God wasn't with you. You know?
For sure. I mean,
you're not going to resent him. But like, you might feel that. You know, I mean, you might feel that, and I'm saying it's a sentiment of that's why we're not one with God. God is with us. You know what I mean? Because if we were one with God, we would never. Like, I feel like it's a different. I feel like it's an enlightened.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree.
And I think that's my distinction between the two things.
Yeah. Like, that's a great parable, man. Wow, respect you remembering that. Just from school as well. Shit.
Yeah, it's always been really
stuck with you.
Big.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. I feel like that, and it relates back to what I was saying earlier about like attaching significance to the status or whatever. I think it comes down to the way we view ourselves. I think has become increasingly like dualistic, and by that I mean we see ourselves as our ego, right? Like everything that you believe yourself to be, whether that's funny, whether that's smart, rich, attractive, an incel, or anything anything that you believe you are is what you carry as your persona, as your ego, right? Like this is the front that you portray to people. This is the mask that you wear because you and it's just it's stories that you believe, right? It's just all things that you believe about yourself. Whereas I feel from what I've seen from enlightened perspectives and what I can imagine as, I guess, you know, a God's eye view, is that you lay down that ego, you set that aside, and you kind of you let go of that relativistic position, and you see things from a removed one, like an observer, like a detached state, where, just like you're saying, where like you experience pain, but instead of saying, oh, woe is me, this pain is mine, you look at it like, there is pain, this is pain that's happening. You don't attach to it. You don't then make it into another story that you tell yourself that becomes part and parcel of who you think you are. Because I think maybe like you can relate to this in terms of, I guess, how you feel like the soul is. But I suppose like the soul is like spotless. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? It's like it's not blemished by the happenings of your life, right? There's nothing that you can do in your life, or that can be done to you, that can affect your soul. Like, does that make sense? Like, I think that seems.
Yeah, so the soul is not tainted. The soul is like your soul is not physical. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Like, yeah. And I guess. Yeah. Well, I guess it's just like when you're able to maintain that perspective, where you can see things more ultimately, less relatively, then you need to question less. You have less reason to get caught up in your own anguish and your own woes. And yeah, I think like the biggest lesson that I feel like I've learned this year is like not getting so deep into the stories. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't make £1 million this year. Oh my god. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's happening? Like, this is not what I wanted to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, because maybe that's just not meant to happen to me right now. But I can't see that because I'm so caught in what I think I want and what I think is the right thing to happen. But as you say, like, in time, all is revealed. I guess like where I diverge from you a bit is that I feel that I don't think we need to leave this life in order to be connected with the higher purpose, or like on the most intimate level, shall we say. I don't think I need to die to be any. I don't think when I die I'll be any closer to God than I am now, shall we say. But I do believe that when this form perishes, the inherent limitations that I have by necessity of this form will also dissolve also. So like my inherent lack of intellect, shall we say, like my inherent ability to not, like, my reason, like, reason is limited. It's a limited faculty. No matter how gifted you are with it, like, it has constraints. But when I perish, I don't have a brain. Do you know what I mean? I don't have actual physical faculties which can be affected, right? Because like I'm not embodied anymore. I'm not in form. And so I do believe, like when you die, I mean, I think when you die you're the most free. I will say that. I think death is freedom on a deep level. But life is also freedom as well. It's just that you have to, I think in life you have to see and stay with the freedom and like maintain it as a perspective. Whereas I think when you die, you don't need, there's no maintenance. Do you know what I mean? There's no need to keep holding on.
Well, people do say the sweet release, like, that's a good phrase.
Exactly.
That would agree with it.
Exactly. And it's like, that's why I have like on a deep level, like I understand why so many people, especially men, like commit suicide now, because I feel like the life that we lead is so dissatisfying, and it doesn't relate to, like, you have certain ambitions, certain goals, right? And it's like those ambitions and goals also carry with them like a social element. Like, those goals are not, even though they're personal to you, they're only they're intimately connected with the world at large, right? Like, the reason why you want a big house or you want to be a CEO of a business that's doing $50 million a year is because you want to be a force in the world that other people can look to and say, you know, look, like, this is success or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you do a lot of things, it appears that you do them for yourself, but ultimately, like, you do them for status, or you do them for, like, how other people will reflect of them. And it's like, I'm sure there's going to be a ton of people that we know that would say, like, oh, look, I do things for myself only. I don't care about other people. And, like, to a lesser degree, yeah, like, if you want to start your own little farmyard patch and, you know, live a self-sustainable life, then yeah, like, of course, like, that is for you. But at the same time, like each person is an example of what a person can be. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you want to be the greatest example of yourself that you can be, you know? And I feel like people for various different reasons and at various different points of their life reach a point when the things that they wanted become incalculably far away. Like, if what you want is to be 35 and a millionaire and, you know, have a big house, have a wife on the side, have 3 kids, no mortgage, you've got money for retirement, you can retire at 40, but then you're 34 and then you're only earning 25k a year, like, you're divorced, you know what I mean, like, your kids hate you, or you've got no kids, then I can understand why, like, death will seem so appealing, because for what you didn't achieve what you haven't achieved in comparison to your imagination, what you wanted to achieve, and because you feel like you're so far away from that, I feel like death is like, it's like you said, it's like a sweet release from that, because in death, I don't even have to hold up a belief. I don't even have to want in death. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why it's so desirable. Like, that's why I myself have felt like I wanted to die, because it's like, in death, I'm released from the state of wanting. I'm released from my ego, where I constantly need things to reaffirm myself. I constantly need things to live by. Like, in death, there's nothing. Like, there's none of that. Like, maybe there's no happiness, but there's also no pain. Do you know what I mean? And I think, like, for that reason alone, like, I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for why people do these things. I mean, I'm by no means saying that it's right. I don't think it's right. I don't think you should kill yourself. Like, don't kill yourself. But understand why death is even desirable to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think if you can see why you desire to die, you can kind of begin to work backwards as to what you need to change. Because it's like, a lot of the things that we want superficially. Like, right, I want to be a millionaire. Why would I not want to be a millionaire? The world we live in, money is only a benefit. Like, of course, yeah, Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems. Like, for sure. I've seen endless stories of these mad rich people that are still depressed, they want to die, or they're still not happy, they still want more. But it's like, a lot of the woes that you have to deal with as a quote unquote normal person, like, a lot of that you can overcome with great wealth. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you don't have to work 12 hours a day if you're a millionaire. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't. Or maybe you can see an end to that. And I think that in itself is like, yeah, it's something to sit with. And it's something that obviously, when I feel like I was in the depth of how I was feeling, like in the peak of depression, shall we say, or the abyss of depression, I feel like it was just something where, like, there were just so many things I wanted to have happened already. And the fact that they hadn't happened, it was like, I started to judge myself as like a failure. I started to see myself as like unworthy. I started to see myself as like, what am I even doing here? Like, firstly, I don't have the things I want, and then secondly, why do I even want these things? Like, what are these things that I want? Like, why do I want them? Like, I can't even tell myself that. Like, I don't even know why. Like, I'm chasing, but I don't know why I'm chasing. And it's like, I guess, obviously, yeah, it takes time to be able to step back from that. But yeah, what you said is, I think what you raised was like a very great point in terms of like seeing when, like, you can see when God's with you, and you can see when God isn't with you, and like God is always with you, but if you start looking, it can seem like God's not there. Do you know what I mean? Because the very thing that you're looking for is right in front of your face. Like, here's your eyes, it's your nose. Like, but yeah, like, I don't know. It's just, I guess, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like, do you so like when you say that you feel like a soul is like like all things have a soul, like, and you say that all living things have a soul, right? So are you saying that you think like insects and stuff have souls, or bacteria?
Yeah, because the soul again is not physical. Like, the soul
has no size or space, right? No, not quantifiable.
Yeah, it's above that. It's what, like, you have a soul, and like, I guess going along with the theme of like reincarnation, like, I guess it's a thing of like, I'm still discovering like kind of how I feel. Like, it's a thing of like, this is what I feel now, because this is what seems to make sense to me. And like, yeah, like the concept of a soul it's hard to like kind of explain it, but for me, I guess, yeah, all living things would have a soul, because I believe in this reincarnation, because I don't believe in eternal like.
So okay, I guess okay, just to look into that, but maybe look at a different route. Like, as a practical question, yeah, like, do you think that, are there new souls being created for you? Are there new souls that are appearing, or are they just recycled ones that have always been here?
See, I don't know. That's the other thing. I don't know. I can't. That's one thing I don't like. Oh, new people. Is it new souls? The endless souls, like, what makes us? Obviously, God would make the souls, but like, you know, like, yeah, I don't know. That's a really, like, because I guess this is again something that I feel like I consider as like higher knowledge, like, you know,
right,
like something that we can't know, but because I guess that would kind of also mean a lot about what happens when you die, because if there are no new souls, then that means that reincarnation is what happens. But if there are new souls,
well, no, it's not that reincarnation could happen if there's no new souls. You just you transform, right? You gain a new form. Like, you'd go from being bacteria, as you said, like a single cell organism, into a human being, right?
Yeah, but that sentiment only really works if there are. Well, it works better if there's no souls, because no new souls.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Okay, so on an interesting one then, do you feel like there's multiple souls within you right now? Because if you're saying that all living things have a soul, right, and bacteria are living, bro, there's more bacteria in you than there is like you. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe, like, but no, because then again, that's to their own sentient. Like,
what do you mean?
It's not too, like, as in each bacteria. If we're going as far as to saying bacteria have a soul, yeah.
What are you? I don't know.
Which I find it hard to say. I find it hard to say that one.
Okay.
If we were to go down that path and say that they did, then the sentiment would be that each bacteria would have its own soul, which isn't to do with any other previous. You know? Like, it would be its own entity and soul.
Yeah,
I don't know, bacteria
I get, but I'm saying, like, if they're alive, right? Why can't they exist within you? If if they're formless, right? If there's no
No, because it's not the same. It's like your soul doesn't merge with others.
no, I'm not saying their soul merged with you. I just mean contained within your body could be endless souls.
Well, yeah, potentially, yeah. Yeah, but my consciousness is one self. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, yeah. In my body, because it's bacteria, maybe there are thousands or millions of souls. Again, I don't know how I feel about bacteria. I say trees is like a potential, but I don't even know about that. Like, but I feel like trees makes more sense. But then again, it's like it's me just guessing. Like, it is just me guessing, and it sounds crazy.
Nah, it doesn't really sound that crazy. I mean, you're talking about something like quite mythological, you're talking about something strictly irrational, which is not a basis to say that it doesn't exist, but it is a basis to say that you can't necessarily have perfect understanding of it in a way that's scientific right now, as we are in 2019. Like, yeah, maybe in 2900 or whatever, people can work that out scientifically. Like, you can find out what's within you. But that's kind of like that. You know, I never considered this before. I only raised it because you said that you felt like living things had souls. But that's interesting to think about, though, that maybe within you is contained like endless life potential. Do you know what I mean? Like endless souls ready to be, that are being used in one form now, but maybe when their purpose is fulfilled in the particular, like say you're a red blood cell, right? Like, again, I know you haven't said that. Well, a red blood cell is like, it's living, you know what I mean? It's composed of living things. Like, yeah, I don't know.
But yeah. But anyway,
yeah.
Let's just say a tree, because I feel like a tree is the easiest one to picture.
Yeah, no,
like,
fair. So say you're a tree, yeah. Like, when your purpose is fulfilled as a tree, like, you know, it dies permanently. Like, it doesn't just die and then like it can regrow. Like, whether it properly dies. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say that it wouldn't be born again in a different form. But, you know, that's personally what I found very interesting about Buddhism, like, that initially led it to me. Obviously, reincarnation is something that it's attractive. Do you know what I mean? Like, the thought of reincarnation, because it's quite unique to think that, like, rather than just saying when you die you go to a certain place, it's like you die and then you transform into another form, but that form doesn't resemble the form that you had before. Like, that's perplexing and it's attractive to think about. But it's like,
yeah, I guess so, yeah.
One thing in particular that attracted me to Buddhism is that it is stated in some of these religious texts, like that, the Abhidharma, that through sustained meditation and advanced meditative practice, so say you do it for X number of years, even though it could happen to you right now, it's going to take practice to achieve like perfection or whatever. At meditation, like, it's said that through the practice of that, through cultivating like meditative insight, that you can actually access your past lives, and you can actually deep dive into like the experiences that you had before. And like, even though again that's mad to think about, I think it makes sense when you look at it biologically, right? You're the product of your parents, right? And your parents are the product of their parents, and so on and so forth. And then every number of generations has led to you, right? Like like physically, literally, they've led to you. Like, they're as much part of you as you are of them. You know what I mean? Even though you're distinct from them, you're removed from them, like, they compose who you are in both genetics and experience, right? I was saying this the other day, like, I have an irrational fear of caterpillars, yeah? That I have no reason to fear. Like, I have no idea why, yeah? But when I was young, my mum told me that my granddad was actually afraid of caterpillars. And like, I was afraid of them before I ever knew this, before he ever told me, or at least I'm not consciously aware that he ever like put this fear on me. Maybe he did, but I don't feel like, it's just so random that it wasn't. I don't think that was something that would have happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one. I don't have any memories of being booped out by my caterpillars by my granddad. But anyway, like, my point is that fear that I have, interestingly, seems to have a genetic component to it. It seems to originate in a time previous to me. And I'm saying, like, when you look at it like that, even though that's a very small micro example, and again, I'm not saying that it's hard to prove that. I'm not. There's countless man that could deny that.
Like, we are talking about some stuff that is like crazy. But like,
it's not.
It sounds so airy fairy. At the same time, it's just because there's no physical.
Well, no, but my point is there is something physical to it, because I'm saying to you it's genetic. Yeah. Like, I'm saying to you it's built into my DNA. And like, something interesting that I was seeing was like, obviously how human beings have been tested on rats for like the longest time. Like, rats innately have a distinct terror of like the smell of cats, right? Like, if a rat smells, or a mouse, or probably, I don't know if it's both, I don't know how intimately they're linked, but mice or rats, as part of their natural makeup, they're genetically predisposed to being terrified by the scent of cats. But scientists have managed to manipulate that component to where they're actually not scared of it. Like, there's ways you can mess with their genetics and things you can do to them that like make them either numb to it or they lose the fear of it. And I'm saying apparently, like, after like breeding them over and over, like, the offspring generations down lose the innate fear of like cats. And it's like, that's basically my reasoning or line of thought about like genetic knowledge, or genetic I don't know however you want to call it, genetic knowledge, shall we say, or genetic information that like can be passed down. And I can imagine that, like, say I lived a life 500 years ago that's like in a continent completely distinct from the one I'm in now. I don't think, like, using that same rationale, and again, I don't know, obviously this depends completely on how much access you can have to that, you can tap into that. Perhaps I can like learn about the experiences that I had previously that my great granddad had. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, would you be mad? That would be mad. But yeah, because also I guess when like other religions say stuff like that as well, like it fits in with. So I've told you about the Rubik's Cube.
No, right? What?
So I have this theory, which I've never like looked up, because I imagine that probably someone has thought this before. I don't think it's particularly out there.
Right.
But my theory is that actually, like, the religions are actually the same.
Oh yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
But what you see it as will always seem different. So my way to say this is that, imagine I showed you a Rubik's Cube. Yeah. Now you don't know it's a Rubik's Cube. You just think it's a cube. Okay. If I showed you a cube, but I only ever showed you one side.
I think it's a square, isn't it?
And it was red. Yeah. No. If I showed you one side and it was red, you could safely say that the rest of the cube is red.
Or I might assume,
You've only ever seen red.
There's a good chance I'll assume.
So therefore, to you, there's a good chance that you could say
it's a red cube, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if someone showed me the cube and I only ever saw blue, I could say that the cube is blue. Like, what do you mean it's red? It's blue. Like, I saw a blue side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the same way, if we show someone it like yellow, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. Yeah. So we've all been shown a different side, and have attributed that to being a different cube. Yeah. And therefore, we all believe that there's a different color, and that's like how it should be. However, we're all looking at the same cube.
Fundamentally.
Yeah? And that's how I kind of view
Religions,
like,
yeah.
a lot of the religions. Like, because it's like all the teachings, a lot of the people in the story, it's like it seems too close to not be, because it's not like it's not like one religion is like be kind to everyone, like
there's a lot of commonalities,
blah, blah, blah. And then another one is like obviously there are some that are like hatred and stuff, you know what I mean, like but fundamentally
there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap.
Are very, very similar in my eyes, at least. Like maybe not to everyone else, but yeah. So that's my theory of like the Rubik's Cube. Like,
yeah, I think you have mentioned that to me before. Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely agree with that.
It's also because then it's also that point of like, well, if that is true, then like it's a sentiment of, well, if the Buddhists are feeling this enlightened state, then maybe actually there is an enlightened state, and maybe like if you're Christian, like the heaven thing, like maybe that's what you reach. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's that overlap of like that is the thing. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a bit of fuel for, I guess, that argument.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But yeah, it's a mad one. It is a mad thing. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. Say one, bro.
But I would really like some input from some people that have read the Bible like a lot more than me on like soul stuff, and it's something I definitely want to look into more because I want to read a lot more about it, because I think that my ideas are very much just based off like my upbringing and stuff, like, and it's not to say that they're like wrong or like anything like that, but like it'd be interesting to read the scriptures and see if my opinion changes.
Yeah, it would be.
Or if like it all stays the same.
I'm going to cut the recording there. But